here we are again, today flying out the FGR. And this thing got a few buffs, got a few changes, and my favorite change is that the gun port is finally aligned. Second change, it gets aim 9Gs now, the load limit has been removed, so you can basically always fire these things. Last thing is, Doppler radar now works, and the Sparrows are a lot more reliable. Now you get two of these circles, as you can see right there. You have the outer circle as well as the inner circle. The inner circle indicates that you have a lock, outer circle will indicate if it will track or not. I only fire these things when I get a full lock. I try to get around 12 kilometers, sometimes a little bit closer, depends a bit on the angle, and it depends a little bit on, well, the altitude. The higher you are, the longer these missiles go. Noticing that this guy is pretty fast, so I try to go with a little bit closer than usual, and I'm gonna see if I can ghost this thing in. Looks like I can. He's very high, he's very slow, well, relatively slow, low IES. He can't really dodge that one, and he gets sparrowed at the start of the game, and this is pretty usual. Notice there's an F5C pitching up on me, and this is pretty bad. If this was an F5E I would have died. Yes, bad call, but this was one of the earlier games, and I'm just trying to see what I can get away with, kind of see if I can, well, be as aggressive as I can, because when I'm trying to get footage, when I'm starting to learn a plane, I'll always try to be as aggressive as I can at the start, and then slowly but surely see where I meet the line. This one was definitely over aggressive, and if this was anything with better missiles than the 9Es, I would have easily died. And I'm running this thing with the 4 Sparrows, with the gun port, as well as the 4 aim 9Gs, and I think that the Sparrows are kind of mandatory on this thing, because the whole gimmick of this plane will be the Doppler radar. And if you don't bring Sparrows, why even take this thing over the F4E? The F4E is essentially better at every regard. It will be faster in the long run, because it doesn't have the gun port. You can run it without the gun port and it will be extremely fast, but the gun port adds a lot of weight as well as drag. So it's kind of up to you if you want to take him or not. I like having a gun, because I feel like I'm just flying around with my dick in my hand. If I don't have a gun and I'm just flying around and people go head on with me, don't have the range to lock them up, don't have the time to get a lock, and sometimes you're just going to need the gun. So I think not bringing Sparrows, because that's the gimmick of this plane, is a handicap. Not bringing the gun is a massive handicap, and not bringing heat seekers is kind of dumb. So now you're completely stuck with a full loadout. 20 minutes of fuel is also, in my opinion, not enough. You can bring 20, and a lot of times you will have a little bit of a better experience, and that's essentially because, well, on 20 minutes you're a little bit less of a boat. The thing is, yeah, in about 10 minutes you will be out of fuel if you run the afterburner a lot. I do want to mention quickly, on hot maps you will overheat your engines completely with the afterburner on, so maybe take 20 minutes on those. I still took 30, but it's kind of up to you. You won't be able to run the afterburner the entire match anyway, because you will just overheat. You're not going to be outrunning F4s, you're not going to be outrunning BISSes with this loadout, so you can fly it a bit differently, but in the end of the day this will be a support fighter. It's a slightly better F4C, and we all know the F4C is one of the more painful planes to fly at top tier. And no, I'm not doing a video on that thing. That thing is an absolute struggle bus. If you think the MiG-23 is bad, yes, it's still bad. You can tell me it's not bad all you want. Try to get some experience in it first before you say that. This thing is about the same as the MiG-23. I can't actually choose which one I hate more, but this thing at least has a working gun, and the aim 9Gs are a little bit less susceptible to flares, so they make you gotta get a little bit more reliable kills. They're both very annoying to fly, they're both very non-meta, and they're just support fighter. This thing as a support fighter will be a lot better, but as we all know, support fighter is kind of code language for this plane isn't very good. And sorry to step on your toes, but the F4E just does almost everything better. Sure, you don't have the Doppler radar, it has a little bit less thrust, but the F4E is better at altitude. The F4E is faster because it doesn't have the gun port. And the Doppler radar is a little bit of a gimmick. As I said before as well, this is the only redeeming factor basically for this plane. Aim 9Gs, however, are ridiculous at range. And I will show you some examples in a second. He will be after this game, and I will have a timestamp down below for some Sparrow kills as well as some aim 9G kills. And these missiles are cracked. They're not quite aim 9Js, but the poking ability of these missiles is insane. And the missiles kind of loft a little bit, which means it doesn't go directly towards the target. Aim 9Ls do this as well. They will go towards the target, they will go a little bit up or a little bit down depending on the heading of the enemy plane. And because of this, it will not see every flare. making them a little bit less susceptible, as I said earlier as well. The plane in itself, I don't really enjoy it. I still think that other top tiers at this BR are a lot better. The gun pod is nice, you have 1200 rounds and it's finally aimable. It's not like on release or a few patches ago where the cursor was very low below the nose, making it almost impossible while you start rolling because the gun is a little bit offset. You're kind of drawing a circle with the gun pod instead of like a line that's rotating. It's a lot better now. I still don't like it and it's still too slow, and if there is someone that gets on your 6, and it almost doesn't matter what it is, if it's a tail aspect shot and they are within a kilometer, you are not dodging the missile. Unless it's an AIM-9BE or those kind of equivalents. You can dodge an AIM-9G. It's a little bit more about timing, and if you time it wrong it will still slam right into you. So be careful about that. And I don't have much to explain about the footage in the background. I have another game later on where I reverse an F4F. But in general this thing is as straightforward as it comes. I personally would fly the F104S over this thing. You have a centerline gun as well. The Vulcan, you only have 2 Sparrows, but that's all you need. I would like if the F104S would be able to carry a little bit more heat seekers, maybe 2 AIM-9Gs, 2 Sparrows. I would love that kind of loadout. Unfortunately for us that's not the case. So this plane, it's a brick, it accelerates decently, it's not the best, it's absolute trash at altitude, and if you are at altitude and someone shoots a Sparrow at you, keep in mind, if you chaff after the guy has fired and the guy that's locking you keeps the lock on the chaff that you popped, that missile will keep tracking, and I will have an example of that later on here. I will timestamp that at the end. No, I'll put it at the start of the AIM-7 thing so you can go directly there. It will not actually care about the chaff, it will have the chaff locked, but the missile will keep going for you. Keep that in mind. And if you're at altitude, which you shouldn't be in this thing, the Doppler radar kind of forces you to the deck where you have the most maneuverability, where your Doppler radar actually means something, and that's why I'm not really running chaff on this thing. I'm on low range or low altitude. People can't really lock me other than other FGRs. Of course, talk about radar missiles, so I don't really need that. Set the F5E on fire, I'm just going to ignore him. He shouldn't be doing much. The F5E damage model is absolutely ridiculous, not sure what they did to that. And one thing I completely forgot to mention, I'm doing this post after the entire video, the overheat on this plane, if you get Sicily, Spain or LLMA, is absolutely insane. You cannot really run a lot of throttle. So I don't really have much to say about this plane. Other than the AIM-9Gs and the Doppler radar to me are extremely funny. I love shooting a missile at 3.5 kilometers and just seeing it goes into someone and blowing them up. There's something very therapeutic about that. The problem is, however, the radar is an extremely finicky thing in this game, and half the time you're not able to lock onto the right thing. It starts tracking the wrong targets, it starts bouncing around, it starts tracking friendlies, and sometimes it doesn't even appear on your map or on your radar thing on the right. Keep in mind you need to set up your Doppler radar, otherwise you're just using the regular radar. So you go to the control systems, you type in radar, and then it will be the second one from the top, and it says change radar -IRST mode. I have it on my numpad. Whatever you use is up to you, and these are the AIM-9Gs. Just look at this, the range on these missiles is absolutely ridiculous. And another thing I want to mention about the Doppler radar, the Doppler radar will largely only work when people come head on with you. If people are not coming head on with you or flying directly away from you, the Doppler radar will struggle with it because it's measuring the distance that the target is coming towards or away from you. So if someone is flying perpendicular to you, switch to your normal radar and lock them that way. The higher you go, the more reliable the normal radar will be. The lower you go, the more reliable the Doppler radar will be. But it's a little bit of fine-tuning, figuring out what works and what doesn't. It's very situational, so I can't really give you an idea. In general, if you can lock them with your normal radar, just use the normal one and you should be completely fine. And the range of these things is it's just so funny to me. It's great. And here it's not so much about the missile, but more about how I dodge the one that's incoming. 9 out of 10 times, if someone shoots an R60 at you from rear aspect, it will go through the flares. If the side aspect, the flares work fine. But if someone is to shoot you from this kind of angle and you're not far away enough, you're not going to break lock. So what do? I go left and right, make the missile zigzag. It's going to dump a lot of speed, and this way you can outrun it. You're not going to be outpulling the missile and relying on flares. It's a little bit RNG, so I wouldn't count on it. Just try to outrun it if you can, and otherwise turn preemptively. And here, this is what I was talking about with the AIM-7s. He's chaffing. And you can see that if I didn't shoot it yet, I keep locking the chaff, and if I launch then, it won't track. But I was waiting for the chaff to disappear so I can lock him himself. And you can see that I'm locking the chaff right now because the plane is right there, and it will keep tracking and it will blow you up. So keep that in mind. If you see the missile come off the rail, you better try to outrun it, you better try to notch it, or you better try to at least dodge it, because your chaff are not like flares in this game. And if I just keep locking the ECM after he popped it, it'll track you anyway. Going head on here, and this is what you don't want to do. Sorry, Sniff. This guy dives to the deck, doesn't chaff, doesn't do anything, thinks he's going to break the Doppler. As long as you're flying towards me, it's not going to break lock. And this is probably the longest range missile I've had on the deck, 12 kilometers. And look at this thing go. He's just going to keep on going. This is going to take a while, by the way. And I wasn't exactly sure if it was actually going to track or not. So after a little while I was like, okay, that missed. But keep a very close look. It hits. The second one hits as well. These missiles have an extremely long range. Yes, at the end they're kind of just proximity mines, but if you fly into them, they will still blow you up. So look out for that. If you're getting radar locked, look around, look at the direction, and at least pull a little bit left and right, so at the end of the life expectancy of a missile, it won't be able to lead into you anymore because it's simply too slow. And again, I don't really have to pull hard. That missile is going to be out of range. I still go a little bit left and right just to make sure that it doesn't track me. Just to make sure that it loses all of its energy. And this FRF, called Super F, is about to dive on me. He's about to outrun me, and you can tell that I can't really do much about this, and the speed he has over me is absolutely bonkers right now. And he's going to be closing the gap pretty quickly. I want to turn in right here. Notice he shoots an AIM-9J at me, so I can't. I have to break off again, and I have to outrun this missile, because if I had kept turning there, he would have blown me up. So now we turn back into him. I throttle drop here, I want to be slower than him, and I don't want him to side aspect me. He's close enough, afterburners back on, I'm gonna need the speed here. I'm slower than him, so my turning circle is a little bit tighter, and I go up here, and if I miss this, I die. He pulls up, I just get a shot in, manage to crit him, and he's going to be dead. And F4F or F4E, which are essentially the same plane by the way, should never lose this fight, ever. Not a single reason for him. Sure, I have a little bit more trust. I'm also heavier than him if I run full combat load, and I don't have the slats. My turning circle is not very good, and in the end that's exactly what kills this plane. And again, a Doppler radar shot. You can see that it's Doppler radar because it says track on the right with PD. Pulse Doppler. Shoot him down, blow him up, and it's going to be kill number 1. And this is more of a ramble game, not much going to happen. Recording died right there, so I had to cut it a little bit. But this plane is completely reliant on its utilities. It's radar, it's flares, it's steam, it's missiles and all those kind of things. It's all about the things they put on this plane that make this thing different. The airframe itself is far from good, and if you are to run this with only missiles, you are going to be a lot faster. But you are just going to be a little bit, like I said, flying around with your dick in your hand because you don't have a gun. If you don't bring the Sparrows, then why fly this thing? Why not just fly the F4E, the F4F? If you don't have it, that's something else. The AIM-9Gs in the end of the day are not as good as the AIM-9Js. They are definitely funny and I love them. I love AIM-9Gs after this. But I just think they're not worth it. And if you agree with that or not, I kind of don't care. That's my opinion. You can call me trash all you want, but at the end of the day I'm probably outperforming you anyway. And yes, I'm getting a little bit tired of all these comments, especially on the MiG-23 video. You get called out on being a shitter, get called out on not knowing how to play jets. I think I'm more than adequate to comment on jet gameplay, at least after all the games I've done. Hope you enjoyed it. Probably seen F5E, maybe even a tank video. Yes, you heard that right.